So
Tiffany,
you think, Terry?
it looked like that Tiffany has joined.
Yes, it looks like Tiffany
Well, it
is.
looks like she's trying to join. Yes.
Okay. Looks like she's on there now. Anything you'd like to say, Terry, before I jump in?
Well, who do we have on the line? Do we have all the
So we've
regionals?
got Andre and
Okay.
Deb and Gail,
Okay.
Jean,
Yeah.
Lorraine, Luke, Rachel, Susan, Virginia, and Wendy.
Okay. Yeah. I think Tiffany had mentioned that a lot of the regional recruiters would like to have some better knowledge of searching for participants that are in the program. I know that there's a lot of stuff on the side and within, you know, things on the side. So it might be, it was a good idea if we could just sort of go through some of the more common searches and shortcuts and, what's currently available now, which is sort of just some of the basic searches versus what will be available after, as a work group, we come up with the types of reports that we would like to have administratively and the type of reports that we think that the participants would also like to have. So somewhere down the line, we will be able to do much more in terms of accessing data and grouping data and sorting data, much more than what we have now. So I don't want people to think that this is the extent of the administrative reports. So.
And that's something that just, we are going to be launching that group starting tomorrow to start considering that. So as we're going through this training, people should definitely be considering what else they would like to see and to send that stuff forward once you know what the sort of what we can do now versus what we can be doing in the future. So.
Okay, I think that's it.
Great. Thanks, Terry and Tiffany. So right now you all are muted just to keep the call organized, but you can definitely enter questions into the chat box, and then we can unmute your lines and you can provide more clarification, and it can be more of a dialogue, or we can just kind of open up the line at the end for people to ask questions. So logging in, this is the same kind of view that you should mostly see. Maybe you won't have the Federal Green Challenge on it, but when you log into Retract Connect, you'll see your dashboard, and you can go to options on the right-hand side to access the different search tabs. And today I want to go through each of the tabs and show you the most useful things you can do in each tab and kind of what the main purpose is for each of the tabs. So let's start with the Members tab. This may be the tab that you're most familiar with because initially we had recommended this tab for most of your searching functions, so you already may know what you can do in this. I think that the most useful aspect of this tab is that you can search based on who has data and who doesn't have data for certain years or for certain forms. But other than that, you can do a lot of the other more useful functions in the other search tabs. This tab does give you a nice overview of what the name and location is of each organization in a visual way, and you can also see what reports they have available for the year, whether it's, for example, PA Green Colleges, their participation is locked and awaiting verification. You can easily see that, and for Ahold, you can see that the participation agreement is locked and approved, whereas the blue check mark indicates that they don't have baseline goals or annual data. So Rachel just asked if this is restricted by region, and actually all of the tabs, they start out as a default for all regions, but by going into the Groups tab, and typing in the region that you're interested in, for example, region 2, you can click enter and filter just for that region. And this is true for all of the tabs. So the default is all regions, but you can select any region or multiple regions by doing the Groups tab and entering the region that you're interested in. It's important to note that the groups, it'll pull everyone who's in Region 2 and everyone in Region 4 if you enter both groups. So any group that is entered into this, it'll pull all of anyone who is in any of those groups. So I would say that the most important aspect, again, is kind of this nice visual view that you can see for the participants. You can change the status year to 2013, 2012, and 2011, because those are the only data years that we have available for FRC right now. And it's important to know this survey response status is probably the biggest thing that'll limit who shows up and who doesn't show up. So has data will pull anyone who has data and for that year, and no data will pull up anyone who's missing data for that form. So Dev was wondering if we need to type in the region or if it's included as a drop-down. So you don't need to type it in. It's in the drop-down, but you need to scroll all the way down to the end to get to the region. This group section, we're using it for a number of different purposes. So you can see affiliates are part of this kind of grouping category. Organization level, which is for the multi-organizations, how we're kind of having an overall corporate header for them. Participant status, which isn't fully set up yet. Partner or endorser, you can also search for those via groups or the regions. So you can select them in the drop-down or you can type them in. And either way, that'll allow you to select the group that you're interested in. So Andre asked if the status year means the year that they joined. And no, the status year is associated with the form. So it's important to know that the participation agreement, that will show up based on when it was created. So everyone who was migrated and anyone in the future, it'll have a 2013 for this year. But starting 2014, that's when the participation agreement may show up for people who submit in 2014. Andre also asked what it means if they do or do not have data. Does it refer to whether they registered or does it refer to whether they entered their baseline data? So again, the status year is about when the form was created, or for annual data, it would be what year the annual data form is for. So for example, for 2013, you don't see all of the annual data forms have a blue plus sign because no one has submitted annual data for 2013. So the status year for annual data it's blank for that form for 2013. But if we change the status year to 2012 and hit filter, you'll see now that Atlanta Braves has annual data for 2012. So that blue plus sign has changed to a green check mark, which reflects that the status for has data for 2012, it's true for the annual data for 2012, whereas for 2013, they had no data for that. So Dev asked if there's a way to search by the year they joined. So right now we're working with eMERGE, the database creators, to get an accurate column for their start date. And so that's still in the works right now. Okay, so are there any other questions about this members page? Again, the most useful aspect about this is getting the kind of visual representation of their contact information and organization information and the status of their forms for different years, and whether it has data or doesn't have data. But again, this has data and no data is a limiting factor and so don't get confused if some people don't show up, because that no data and has data can limit who is filtered into this search. Okay, so next we're going to move on. So quickly, Gail asked if there's a key for the symbols, and right here the legend in the upper right-hand corner shows you a key for all of the symbols for each of the forms. So the plus sign means that the form's blank, that the participant hasn't accessed it or saved any information. The green check mark shows that the form is saved but not locked and submitted for our review. This exclamation point will show up if there's an error, but hopefully they won't be able to save it without that error coming on. And this multiple check marks, this will show up on the annual data forms because you're able to submit multiple forms for an annual data year. So for annual data, this multiple forms, this double check mark will show up for annual data forms that are saved. So again, just a green check mark means the form is saved. And then we have the lock with the green check mark means it's approved and by EPA, so it's locked and approved. So it's been reviewed, it's good to go, everything is saved for and submitted and approved for that form. And the lock with the hourglass means that it's been submitted by the participant, but EPA, the helpline, whoever, is still reviewing the form. And this legend is accessible. It might only be accessible in this tab. It might also be in the other tabs, but it's in various places throughout the system. So if you look at any of the individual forms, for example, also through this tab, you can click on the specific form to view it. So I just clicked on the participation agreement for Clemson, and it pulls up their participation agreement. And so this actually doesn't have a legend, but you can view the individual forms as on an administrator end, and that'll give you a way to look at the form itself. If you have questions about what a participant may have entered in the form, you can look at each form. And participants will also have access to the legend. It's included on the forms themselves. So if we take a look at Clemson University's baseline data form, sorry, it's not on there. I'm sorry, it's not on the form itself, and it's in a different area. When they look at when the participants see their form status, they have a different interface. They can kind of look at each of their forms, and they have the same icons for whether they've saved it or whether it needs to be completed or whether EPA is reviewing it when they look at their main screen, so they can see the legend and that information as well. So Rachel asked if the regions are able to unlock data like they could before. Right now, regions aren't able to change the status of any forms. So you aren't able to approve or unlock forms at this time. You are not able to. You're welcome, Rachel. So Virginia asked, perhaps we've answered this on past calls, but when will WasteWise data for FRC partners be transferable in ReTrack Connect? So all of the Food Recovery Challenge data has been transferred over, including the multi-organization. So that's a new update. We've worked to transfer over data for all of the participants that were migrated over to the new system, except for 2 exceptions for the multi-organizations who are, their structure in the new system is they're still deciding how they want to be structured. So now you should be able to view the data for the participants that have been migrated over. There are still a few, I believe there's 18 as of last week, universities or other partners that are existing users that haven't opted into the system yet, and we're still encouraging them to join through their existing accounts. So we're going to continue to follow up with them. But other than that, all the existing participants have been transferred from the old system and their data has been migrated over. Okay. Well, we can circle back to this tab at the end of the training if anyone else has questions later on. So now let's move on to the responses tab. So this is the way that you should think of this tab is that it allows you to review all responses to certain forms. And again, this first shows up with everyone in all regions, but you can, in the Groups tab, you can select a certain region, for example, region 10, to filter. So if you're interested in viewing what your participants submitted into a form, this tab allows you to see all of the responses in each field entered into the form. So, for example, we can look at the baseline data forms for all of the participants in Region 10. So by changing the survey field, it allows you to select which form in the system you're interested in viewing. So you can see all of the fields for the participation agreement, all of the baseline data, baseline goals, and annual data. So let's start with baseline data. In the status field, you can choose whether you want to see any form, whether it's saved, submitted, or verified, or you can look at only saved forms, only submitted forms, or only verified forms. But let's stick with any status because that'll give us the most comprehensive view of all of the baseline data forms. In the year, you can choose what year it was that I'm not sure whether this is actually, I believe this might be for what year the baseline year represents, but I'm not positive about that. So I don't want to confuse you with that. So let's stick with all years. And to run the report, you hit go. And first you just get a snapshot of who it is that has baseline data. So all of these column headers are sortable, so you can click on the column header to change how it's sorted. For example, now it's in descending alphabetical order or ascending alphabetical order, or you can switch it to be descending alphabetical order. Andre asked what the cycle means, and this is this is just a designation in ReTrack Connect, their system, when a form can only be submitted once, like baseline data, you only submit baseline data once. So that's a one-time only cycle, or the participation agreement, you only submit that once. It's a one-time only cycle. Whereas annual data, that is submitted for multiple years. So it's really not a useful designation for you. I wouldn't worry about it at all. Just keep it on all cycles. It's just something part of the system. I wouldn't worry about it. So we'll keep it on all cycles and go back to baseline data. So Gail was just asking the survey list of available types of surveys, and I'll click on that again. It's just all of the forms that we have in the system. So you have 5 forms: the participation agreement, which is the first form, partners submit, participants submit, then baseline data, baseline goals, and annual data. So first I just want to show you the neat capabilities that this report allows. So when you run it, it just gives a quick snapshot, and you can see whether, and the status indicates whether it's locked and approved. For example, the first Comcast Arena, we know from our handy legend that this is verified by EPA, whereas LeanPath, it only has a saved form indicated by this green check mark. They haven't submitted it, and it's not approved yet by EPA. To view all responses in this form, because that's what I said that's most useful for, we can click this Export as XLS button, and it'll export the results of the survey into an Excel document. So let's go ahead and see that, and it's running this report. So it'll pull up, and I'm going to open it up for you, and you can see now it shows you, it has a column for each field in the form. So we have a helpful thing, it'll show you what your the baseline year is indicated in the form. So Comcast Arena, you can see what they selected as their baseline year, Whole Foods, all of that it'll show you. And you can sort, once you get it into Excel, you can add filters, and that can help you with any data management that you need, or the helpline can assist you as well. You can see whether they selected summary activities or detailed activities, what they actually diverted. So this could be a helpful tool for you when calculating numbers for your partners until reports are fully set up in the system. And basically there's information for all of the fields that were in the form. So you can kind of play around with this to see if there's useful information that you can get for numbers for your partners. So again, this is available for each type of form in the system. So we have a few more questions that I'm going to just take a look at and read to see if we can address them. No, that's okay. So Luke asked, what's the annual goal form? And so the annual goal form is what partners will be using to submit their annual goals. Right now, no one has used annual goal forms. So if I click survey and if I select annual goals and hit go, no one will have submitted annual goals, so it's not going to show up at all. So that's why there's 0 results. And participants, starting with the next year's reporting cycle, they'll need to submit an annual goal along with their annual data. So the annual goal form is very similar to the baseline goal form. And we can take a look at the form itself later on if you want to. But that's just the form that partners use to set a goal each year for their participation. So Rachel has some questions about baseline year. The baseline data is still separate from annual data, just like it was in the old system. So participants will enter, they have a separate baseline data form, and they select what year their baseline data represents. So this is a new part of the system, and I'll show you the baseline data form right now, since that could be helpful for you. Oh, you can't. 1 second. So here's the baseline data form, and you choose what year your baseline represents. So in the old system, you couldn't choose what year it represented. It just had that random default of 1992, which was a quirk of the old system and often confused our participants. But now in the system, we have an upgrade that you can select what year your baseline represents. And so the first step for participants is to choose 12 months of data before they joined FRC, and that will be their baseline year. And following that, they should report annual data. So annual data year is separate from baseline data year. They're two separate forms, and so the years will show up in different associations. They are not linked together. So if someone were to put in baseline data, select their baseline year as 2012, as Ahold did, they won't automatically have a 2012 annual data form with corresponding data. The two are not linked and they're separate, so you need to complete them separately. Okay. So we're going to move on from the responses tab, but I just wanted to show you that this is a quick way for you to get a view of all of the information submitted in the forms for participants in your region. So it can be really helpful for you in aggregating data. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next tab, which is the search tab. The search tab, you should think of specific values. It'll allow you to search for specific information and return what was entered in a field in the form. So for example, you can select at the top what form you're interested in finding information for. So let's start with the participation agreement. It defaults with all members, and it defaults again with all regions, but you can choose a specific region, for example, region 3. And then the question tab, that corresponds to different fields in the form. So if you were interested in seeing, for example, how the organization found out about the Food Recovery Challenge, you could hit go, and the value in this column right here shows you what the response was in that tab for that question. So for example, PA Green Colleges found out about the Food Recovery Challenge through PERC, the Pennsylvania Environmental Resources Coalition. The rest of these say NA, but that's because they were migrated from the old system, and so we didn't have that information for them. If you wanted to see who was participating in the USDA Food Waste Challenge, you could select this as your question. And so each one is associated with a field in the form. And you can decide in this response value, it shows you what the options are for the participants completing the form, so they can decide whether they're participating or not participating. So you can select participating to see everyone who's participating in the USDA challenge. So again, the value column on the right-hand side is what returns the question that you're asking for. So these are all the USDA participants who selected that they were participating through their participation agreement. You can also see access the forms themselves if you're interested by clicking on this edit icon. So that's another way for you to view the forms themselves. So we can click edit and see Arizona State University's actual form, and we can see, oh, they did select that they were participating. So that's why they were pulled into this search for this question. You could also see in baseline data, there are questions for baseline year, so you can hit go and see what everyone's in the value column. You can see what year everyone selected, and it also has this neat summary which shows you the percentage of who said what for each value. So out of all participants that have submitted a baseline data agreement, 83% of them, or 38.6%, 83 total, selected 2011 as their baseline year. So this is kind of a neat metric for you, and this would also be available if you chose your specific region. So you can hit go for Region 10, and for 2011, we have 64.71% of the participants in Region 10 selected 2011 as their baseline year. So this is a neat feature that can help you guys with some of your lists or metrics that you might need. You could also look for example, maybe you want to know who put zeros in their baseline data. So in the question, you can choose total tons diverted, for example, and then this response value allows you to enter a specific response that you're looking for. So if we wanted to know who put zeros in their baseline for total tons diverted, we'd hit 0. And I'm going to get rid of the region filter, so it'll show all regions, and hit go to run the report. So this pulls a list of everyone who has a 0 for their total tons diverted. And so it'll give you a nice list. Unfortunately, at this time, only the Responses tab allows you to export the information into Excel. So that's an important note. And so Wendy mentioned that she wasn't able to didn't see the export to Excel option in the Responses tab, and we just updated your permissions today to allow you to export. So if you can't see it, let me know, and I'll check in and make sure that that was selected for you, and we'll fix that for you. But you should be able to do that in the future if you aren't able to. Just email the helpline, and we'll check in on that and make sure you'll be able to export through the Responses tab. So Wendy, just so you know, I'll go back to the Responses tab so you can look. You have to hit go, and you have to choose a specific survey. So if you don't choose a specific survey, you won't be able to see the Excel tab, the Excel export option, which appears in the right-hand corner. So I hit go, and I left it as all surveys, and nothing came up. But if I choose participation agreement and hit go, then now we see the Excel function. That's because they aren't able to put all of the fields for each form in the same spreadsheet because they're not the same. So you wouldn't be able to create an Excel report with the information for every survey because the participation agreement has specific fields, the baseline data form has specific fields. So you need to choose a specific form to actually be able to export it. So thanks for that reminder, Wendy. That was something helpful that I meant to point out in this training. Okay. So just as a quick review, we have the Members tab, which allows you to see a visual representation of the status of your partner's forms and their contact information. The Responses tab allows you to view all responses for all fields of a form, and you can export data with this if you choose a specific survey type. The search field allows you to return a specific value for, so what did they answer for a specific field, what did they put in there. And then finally, let's move on to the Status tab. This tab is nice because it's very simple, and this is what you should use for searching just for a general list of your participants. So I know a lot of you have been wondering, how can I see the participants in my region? And the Status tab is where you want to go. So to search for participants in your region, again, you go into the Groups field and enter in your specific region. Let's do Region 5 this time. The default is approved, and this means this is related to their status in, not their participant status, i.e. like registrant, active participant, new participant, but whether we've just accepted them, allowed them to access the Food Recovery Challenge. So when an organization selects to join the Food Recovery Challenge, they start as pending, until we approve their participation. So that's what these statuses mean. They're related to when they, them actually registering for the Food Recovery Challenge. So the default is approved. But if you wanted to see everyone, including pending partners, maybe pending participants, you could select Request to Join Date, and that shows everybody. So let's hit Filter to run the search for Region 5, anyone from Region 5 who has requested to join the Food Recovery Challenge. And so again, all of these column headers are sortable, so you can click on, for example, if you wanted to categorize them by their sector, you could click on the member type column header, and then that'll categorize them. So you can see all of the college or universities together, all of the nonprofits together. So that's a helpful tool for you. This is also where you can quickly see the email addresses for your participants. So you can, if you needed to kind of pull a list of the contact information, you could, for example, copy this into Excel, and then that way you have a list of all of your email addresses and their names for maybe if you want to email all of the participants in your region. So this is a pretty simple search, but it's a nice, clear, easy way to see a snapshot of the participants in your region. So those are the main search tabs that you can use. And Deb Goldblum asked if there's more than one contact. So if there's more than one contact, you're only able, there's a difference between users and contacts in the system. So a user in this column is anyone who has access to the organization. So if there's multiple people who have access to the organization, they could show up under the Users tab. For example, if we look at City of Eagan, they have 2 people that have access to it. So 2 users, Krista Larson and Cheryl Mesco. They both have access to it. Whereas you're only able to specify one person who's kind of the main contact for the Food Recovery Challenge. And so that would be Krista, based on the email address, is specified as the main contact for the organization. And this is determined by their participation agreement. Actually, I take that back. It isn't determined in their participation agreement. It's determined when they register and create their organization. They're able to specify the contact. So that is where it comes from, I believe. So they can edit that information if they want to update who the contact is for the organization. They can edit it in their account. There's like a My Organizations tab, and they can edit the contact information for who's the main contact for it. So, and Virginia mentioned that you can email all participants through the ReTraC Connect system, and that's true. It will show up as a message from ReTraC Connect, and so you can do that through message members. And I'm going to go back. So on the status tab on the left-hand side, below the filter button, there's a message members function, and that allows you to check who you want to message. And so this is still based on what we filtered, so Region 5. So you could send a message out to your participants that way. It won't look the same as like sending an email from your email address, but it is a way for you to message them through the system. And the message shows up for them both in ReTraC Connect in this messages area, and it's also sent to their email address. So it doesn't look like it's coming from you, so it won't show up as, if your EPA mail. It'll show up as a message from ReTraC Connect, from support@retrac.com. But it can show in the from, like who specifically, like your name, but it won't show up as from your email address. So it won't show up as till.virginia@epa.gov. The email address will be from support@retract.com. So that is an important thing to note on this message members function. And the final thing that I wanted to review is there is one more tab, which is called the Analytics tab. And this is where all of the reports will be located. And as Terry and Tiffany mentioned, these are still in development, and we definitely want to develop through the work group what reports would be useful for you as administrators and what reports would be useful for participants. I wanted to give you a quick preview of a report that will be available for you all soon, which is the participant list report. And this will be an easy way for you to see the status of participants in your region, for example, registrant, new participant, and active participant. And it's another kind of quick search filter that you'll be able to do. Right now, the registrant, new, active participant isn't completely set up yet, so that's why this report isn't available to you. We hope to have this designation all set up by the end of next week, so Friday, December 12th, and that way you'll be able to start using these reports. But just as a preview, there's a small sample that we can show you just what it'll look like. It'll show that the organization name, the industry, so your sector, the state, region, type, and whether they're a new participant, active participant, or registrant. So this will be a really good, helpful report for you in the future, and you will be able to export it when it's ready. So some of you have had some feedback on what to call certain things in the system, and a lot of this isn't in our control in terms of Food Recovery Challenge because these are default names that are part of the whole larger Retract Connect system, and they aren't customizable just for us. So we can't call the Analytics tab a Reports tab just because that's how it's referred to in the system as a whole. So for all programs, Recyclemania, Game Day Challenge, that tab, the report function tab, is called Analytics. So we can't customize that to be called Reports. It's just something we don't have control of in this larger connected system. So if you have any other specific questions, you can enter them into the chat tab, and we'll try to address them. Some of you have asked some more programmatic questions, so maybe we can open up the line for a larger discussion on other questions that are kind of outside these search tabs that we've reviewed today. I also wanted to let you know that I'm going to send around a guide this week about these tabs, and that show you just like quick steps on how to do easy searches in the tabs. So there will be more follow-up in addition to this presentation, and something that you can refer to after. And I did also want to mention that this training has been recorded, so you'll be able to refer back to it as well in that way. So I'm going to try to unmute everyone now so that we can have a larger discussion quickly. So hold on one sec, I'm just trying to fix that. Okay, so we're unmuting everyone, so able to have a larger discussion now. And you have to do it individually.
This is Andre from Region 9. Where will the training be stored?
Terry, will you be sending that along to through the intranet, or?
Yeah. normally we'll put it on the intranet site. And we will certainly, once that is put up there, we will send an email around with the link and let you know that it's up there. I did also want to say that right now, Tiffany and I are working on an FRC user's manual, which we're just about done with. We will also have a companion administrator's manual, which will capture a lot of these things that we've talked about today. So we will have access to something written as well as something which is recorded at our disposal, so that we will be able to sort of say, how do I do this, 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 and then you'll just be able to turn into the manual to do some things. So. Anyone else have anything? Or?
This is Susan. It's very helpful. Thanks for putting this on. I have a basic question about my own access. I do have an account through this SMM measurement group. So can my access to the food also be added to that, or do I need to do a separate kind of login for that?
What do you get with the SMM?
Well, I go to the dashboard just like you started, but I just have the SMM measurement group. So I'm just wondering if the food recovery could be added to that.
It could be, yeah.
Great.
Yeah,
are you asking us to add you?
If you
Yes,
use the helpline, we'll try to work with Emerge to get you set up, get your access to also the Food Recovery Challenge. You already have an existing account, so you might have to do a little bit of coordinating, and we might need to follow up with you. But just if you email wastewisehelp@epa.gov, we'll work with you to get your access to the Recovery Challenge.
Thank you.
Anyone else have anything of immediate importance at all? Or?
We're supposed to send it to them, everybody, like on Friday, on different time, we want to find
It sounds to me like someone might have been asking a question, but I couldn't hear him.
I think that might have been background
Oh, okay.
noise.
All right. Okay. Do we are also working on some more detailed Q's and A's for the helpline dealing with baseline data and what sort of stuff. So all of those things will end up being shared with the recruiters also. And these are mainly just more detailed explanations about what to do if this, what to do if that sort of thing. And these are things that have come up in the day-to-day operations at the helpline and some other places. So we're just trying to make sure that everyone has sort of the same level of information with the same answers to the same questions.
And just to expand a little bit on what Terry's saying, we're trying to make sure that sort of all our people are on the same, level playing field, but also trying to make it as easy for the participants as possible. So since we've sort of went through a couple iterations of the Food Recovery Challenge and what has been required at what time and what has not been required at other times and so forth and so on, in order to be able to sort of track the data and make it consistent, we're trying to sort of figure out for people that join before certain times versus after and those sorts of things. So there's going to be a lot of different categories, especially within the baseline piece of it. And so hopefully we can start covering that a little bit through our participant trainings, as well as start getting emails out to our participants where you all would be included on that, to let them know sort of what group they fit into and what they'll need to do and what actions we'll be taking and those sorts of things. So.
Okay. Does anyone have anything else that they can think of right now? If not, you can certainly email Tiffany, myself, whoever, and then we can make sure that we get, the answers to the questions out to everybody.
Okay, great. Well, thanks everyone for attending. And if you have more specific questions about the searches and the system, you should email the WasteWise helpline. And if you have more programmatic questions, those are better answered by Tiffany and Terry, but we can help as well, of course. So have a great rest of your week, and thanks again.
Thanks a lot,
everyone.
Laura.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.